Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast here on Blab. I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis, and on Twitter I go as PD Beats. We have a special baseball panel of Popternative for you. It's going to be really cool. We're going to talk about baseball. We're going to talk about social media and relations to baseball. We have a really cool panel. We're really excited to get going. So I'm going to introduce the panel very quickly. We have digital marketing manager for the Seattle Mariners in the MLB. We have Nate Rauschenberg. Nate, welcome.
Thank you.
We have TSN reporter, covers, MLB and the Blue Jays. We have Scott Macarthur. Scott, welcome.
Great to be on.
And we have fan engagement and social media coordinator for the West Michigan Whitecaps. We have Jason Brower. Jason, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So what we do on Popternative is we allow you to quickly give yourself an introduction, so the panel could get to know you a little bit more. So Nate, let's start with you. Some opening remarks.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys can see me or not, but as long as you can hear me, I guess that's the most important thing. I'm the digital marketing manager for the Mariners. I oversee everything that we do in the digital space. So social media is where I spend a lot of my time, but it also includes our website, our emails, text messages, things that we're doing on Major League Baseball's apps and things like that. So this is my fifth season. I'm beginning of my fifth season. I've been from the Seattle area my entire life and love the Mariners. So this is kind of a dream job, although this type of job didn't exist when I was a kid. So I can't say it's something that I've always wanted to do, but I'm glad I'm here.
Perfect. Scott, what about you?
Well, this is about to be my fourth season covering the Blue Jays for TSN, TSN 1050 radio in Toronto, and TSN.ca. So the media business really is a multi-platform business now, as they call it. So you've got to be able to do a little bit of everything, radio, TV, and I consider my web column effectively a newspaper-style web column, reports that I write, things like that. I've been in the business for 15 years. I'm from the GTA, which if you're not from the GTA, you probably don't know what the GTA is, but that's the Greater Toronto Area. Worked for a long time up in Ottawa. Now I'm back home. Just grinding it out day in, day out in this business. It's crazy.
And Jason, what about you?
Sure. I run the day-to-day operations of our social media here at the Whitecaps. We're the single-A affiliate of the Detroit Tigers. So most of our guys are either right out of high school, right out of college, so kind of first year in the league. So I'm covering them. And for us, it's more about the fun, and it's about the atmosphere at the games. So I'm trying to show all the fans how much fun it is to come to the ballpark in Grand Rapids and enjoy a baseball game.
Great. Well, I'm really happy to have you guys. So let's get started. So, Popternative is a social media centric podcast. That's what we focus on a lot. And what I find really interesting, and Scott and I talked about this already, is, baseball compared to other sports, it's a totally different structure. There are no clocks. There are no periods that have times. There are 9 innings. So it's a completely different structure. And that being said, in terms of creating digital media and social media content, there's a lot more, it's a more unique, experience. There's a lot more, opportunities to create content by fans and teams during games and after games. So I guess my question is, how would you, Nate, you could maybe start us off because you're, working for a professional baseball team. How would you describe the social media landscape in baseball, around the baseball community?
Yeah, well, you're right in that it's different. We're right next door to the Seahawks, and so we talk about that a lot. But just first and foremost the pace of play. It's definitely the type of sport where fans might be more likely to look down at their phones and be talking with their friends, and it's a social outing, so to speak. And so that kind of lends itself to social media in the moment, and that's part of what leads to the voice that we use in that space too. Just a little bit more playful, a little bit more laid back, trying to have fun. The other part of all that is just, it's a game of a lot of games. So there's a lot of wins and a lot of losses for every team, regardless of whether you're good or bad. And in social media, it's done freely. And so I think that kind of plays a role in the voice of teams as well, because even the best teams are going to have games that are ugly, and the worst teams sometimes may look like superstars. But it's hard to, you have to really be careful with your voice and not stick your chest out too much when, in the grand scheme of things, your team might not be doing so in the standings. And so, it's definitely a marathon, so to speak, and fans will be quick to put you in your place if you get out of line.
Scott, what do you think about that? Can you comment on some of what Nate said?
Well, I mean, I'll comment on. I agree with him 100% on the pace of play. I think baseball's as friendly a sport for social media as there is, because a lot of stuff happens over the course of a baseball game, and oftentimes, it's pitcher versus hitter, and there is a result that comes from that. And a lot of times in a game, as we know, there's strategy involved. When does the manager take the starting pitcher out? What's he doing with his bullpen matchups? Is it time for a pinch hitter? Do you send the runner with a power hitter at the plate in a close game late? I mean, there are a lot of things that come up. And the pace of play, I think one of the things that I like to do, aside from tweeting links to my reports and all the different things, is try to, because I've loved baseball since I can remember, pretty much since I was in diapers, I like to try and think along with what John Gibbons is thinking in the Blue Jays dugout. And the Blue Jays, I think, probably like every team, I mean, it's probably not exclusive to Toronto, but the Blue Jays have a real diehard social media using sector of their fan base, really smart men and women who like and love baseball and who are engaged in every game. And so a lot of the people who respond to me are the same day in and day out, but I kind of use it for multi-purpose, tweeting out, sending out links to my work, whether that's video or written stuff or podcasted versions of some of the radio guesting that I've done on any given day. That's number one. And then number two, during the game, is kind of trying to think along with the game and try to engage people that way, get them thinking about what's happening as the innings go by.
Jason, what about you? And more focusing more on the type of content that gets released during baseball games, where you have 9 innings, there's a 7-inning stretch, there's commercial breaks, and there's breaks in between, when teams are batting, where the other teams get ready. What do you think about that whole aspect of it compared to a game like hockey, where 3 20-minute periods and that's it?
Yeah, it's definitely a longer experience. You get a lot more time to put out content, and maybe a lot more downtime in between posts. So it's you're posting about a home run or taking the lead or that kind of stuff. But then nothing could happen for 2 innings, which is pretty tough. So you're trying to come up with stuff just to keep people engaged and just keep. If it's people just watching the game at home, keeping them engaged with your feeds, trying to come up with content to keep them coming back. And if you don't have something every 10 minutes or so, you're just trying to keep things fresh. And I also go off what Nate was saying about the number of games, just keeping things fresh for 162 games a year. That's got to be tough. We have 70 home games in minor league baseball, so we're a little more fortunate of having only 70 instead of 162. But just the struggle of keeping things fresh for your fans throughout that stretch is one of the difficulties of social media in baseball for sure.
No, that is a really good point. And, to go off that, Nate, the social media for the Seattle Mariners it's pretty fresh and has, there's a comedic aspect of it. Would you agree with that statement at times? Like, you have fun with it.
I will let you decide how to me. It would and I think that it's kind of a part of our brand in general. I mean, getting back to the 90s with commercials, out front of the player commercials that now seem to be pretty common. Just showing players from different sides of the that.
Oh, I think we just lost Nate. Oh, but no, that I was just gonna say about what you were saying before, Jason, about the aspect that there's a lot of games, and Scott, you were saying that too, and the pace and everything. Isn't there, there's more time to kind of there's more time allocated to this whole concept of creating enough content that goes out, right? Whereas in other sport where there's not as much time, let's say, there's more time, especially, even during spring training. Do you think, Scott, that that's something that you would consider, just a baseball thing, like the time aspect of it?
I don't know about that. I mean, in my line of work, and I think it goes across the board. And I mean, up here in Canada, you follow all the hockey guys, Darren Dreger and Bob McKenzie, and I know you had Craig Button on recently. These guys are really active on Twitter. But I mean, one of the things in our industry that Twitter has done is that you've got to be right if you're reporting something. There's no doubt about that. To me, it's always more important to be right than it is to be first. It's always great if you're both. But if you've got something, you've got to get it out there, and you're sure you've got it. You've got to get it out there ASAP. One of my good buddies, even though we're on opposite sides of the fence, but one of my good buddies on the beat is Shai Davidi. And I always assume that if I know something, Shai knows it. Even if that's not the case, I just assume that. So, what happens is if you think you've got something or you do have something, you've got to get it out on Twitter. You don't have time to run upstairs and scribble out the 250-word or 400-word article, get it sent back to the editing desk at tsn.ca and post it up on the web, and then you tweet out the link. You've got to use social media to get it out there. So it's really important to be right, but the pacing of this, in game is different than out of game. If you've got a story, you've got to get it out there, because chances are if you don't, you're going to be kicking yourself 15 or 20 minutes later or an hour later when somebody else has it. And then you're thinking to yourself, gee, I had that. So it's really quick in the pace. Like, gone are the days of 25, 30 years ago, and all the guys who've been in the business will tell me these stories. You might have gotten a scoop on a Thursday night. Well, you'd write your piece on Thursday night. It'd get printed overnight through the presses, delivered to somebody's door on Friday morning. They'd open up the page of the Toronto Star and they'd read your story, and you'd broken it. But there's no 12-hour windows anymore. Sometimes it's 12 seconds.
Nate, you lost your connection for a bit, but
Yeah.
I was just asking, I asked Scott, about the pace, more time. There's there's 7 inning stretch and there's, between batters and there's a lot of time, right? But like you're like a lot of people, that I know enjoy the Mariners social media because at times it's very fresh, it's topical, it's also very funny. Do you think that, when you are, creating content, is there a specific, because of course, your brand, like depending on what brand you have to like depending on how the brand is, you have to make sure that the voice is, according to the brand on social media. Is that a part of, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you, make sure that the Seattle Mariners brand is maintained through all of that time? Like there's like people are going to be on Twitter during a game, and there's a lot of time to interact with fans. So is that sometimes a challenge that you have so much more time where you have to fill the gaps with content to make sure all the fans are engaging and up to date?
Yeah, it's it's all I know, so I think it's a challenge when you compare it to other sports. But I've only worked in baseball for the Mariners, so I think that's just the way it is. But at the end of the day, I think we have a reputation for being fun and witty. But if you look at our responses, they're not all fun and witty. A lot of the questions that we get or things that we're responding to are pretty straightforward. Maybe we get some attention for some of the snarky or witty ones because we're having some fun from time to time. But that's what makes judging a social media account in general so tough. Especially if you looked at a baseball team's account in January. I mean, it's hard to even find opportunities to be witty. Or when you're just out of attention, it's not easy. Your fan base is upset that you're not playing for the postseason, and maybe that's not the right time to have that fun. So it's really, I think, picking and choosing your spot. And so that can be the time of year and the situation, and so that can be what the person is saying to you or who they are. Because over the years, I've developed a relationship of sorts with various fans in that space, and I know who has a sense of humor and who maybe doesn't. Who's a hardcore fan versus casual, and so some of that helps decide what type of approach that I'm going to take.
No, that is a good point. And Jason, this is like the question that I wanted to direct to you, but like the thing I think of when I think of like minor league baseball and social media is I think of almost like social media and digital media is like almost like a godsend for minor league baseball in terms of getting more exposure, right? You have all these new platforms out there where you can experiment and have reach out to many fans all over the place and kind of create a brand and a personality for these minor league A or AAA or AA teams, right? So what you do with the West Michigan is that something that comes up when you're creating content for teams, all these opportunities that you never had before to kind of get a minor league baseball team this exposure?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've definitely seen it over the last couple of years that social media has grown minor league baseball to many different fan bases. Before it was mostly a regional kind of thing. You were known in your city, maybe around the Midwest if you're in the Midwest League like we are. But yeah, now you can get national exposure for different content, and for us it's looking for that unique experience. I'll give you one example. We do a between inning promotions, like most minor league baseball teams, crazy stuff between innings, and we have a small appliance race where 3 kids get into these small appliances and run around the field in a little race, and we had one just like a perfect storm. People, they were taking out each other. They were all falling down. So I grabbed the video of that right after it happened, tweeted it out, actually tweeted to SportsCenter, said, hey, here's a not top 10 for you. And then that night we were on not top 10s on SportsCenter, and then Good Morning America picked it up, and we were nationwide for about a week. So it was pretty cool. See how social media can take that one little event that we have every game and show it off to a national audience.
And that's interesting. Also, Scott and Nate, you could chime in too, because I think of this whole aspect of leveraging pop culture in sports on social media. Like, for example, Nate, when Robinson Cano signed with the Mariners, that whole Jimmy Fallon, where he had like a cardboard cutout of Robinson Cano, and Yankee fans were booing him, and then Robinson Cano was actually like in the background. Like, that blew up on social media. Do you ever capitalize and post that stuff and keep the fans in the loop of other stuff like third party content about the Mariners?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned those types of shows for just in-game feature ideas all the time, because what those late night shows have really figured out is how to create these really short, memorable, entertaining video features that play really well in that space. And yeah, if it's something interesting as it relates to Mariners baseball, we want to point it out to fans. I look at the Mariners account in a way as a filter for Mariners content, and hopefully we're contributing to that. But if others are creating great stories or just funny video segments, we see that, and that's part of the value of following the Mariners, is that you don't have to follow everybody in that space, because we're going to make sure to point out the good stuff to you. Yeah,
and Scott, this is like just an example I had. Like, unfortunately, Scott, we're not going to have any more bush parties in Toronto anymore. As Kawasaki is now with the Cubs, but that type of stuff as well, right? Those little, like, those stuff that has to do with the players, the little off-field, like, Easter eggs, I would call it. You see it in hockey all the time. The All-Star game with John Scott and everything. Everyone is, like you said, everyone's very, like, you have to be quick on social media, and it's something that I see in baseball too. Even on like TSN's top 10s, top 10 fan moments in the crowd. That little boy who got the foul ball, put it in his pocket, and then took another foul ball and gave it, the one he already had, it gave it to a little girl. That type of, those little like nuggets, let's say, on social media. Is that something as a reporter you also look at as well, and make sure that you're, from, like, if you have, a Scotty Matt Thinks brand, you know what I mean? You want to keep them informed as well, right?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm probably not so good with pop culture. My Twitter account, you'll notice all the Seinfeld references that I make, and
that's gold.
Scary enough, man. That show ended 18 years ago this May, so that should tell you my demographic, my age, and all that stuff. But I manage my Twitter account. Again, it's about me effectively and my work. But I do try to let people in on my personality a little bit without getting too personal. And it says right in my Twitter handle, as I describe myself, that Jed York ruined my football team. Well, and Nathan will laugh at me being feet from CenturyLink Field, but I'm a diehard San Francisco 49ers fan. And so one of the things that I like to do in the off season is gripe about what's gone on with that team. And the reason that I do that is because I actually believe and feel what I'm saying in the moment. But I want to show people that us reporters are human beings too, because one of the things that I think happens sometimes, and it's nobody's fault, you'll see a lot of times comments thrown our way, yeah, well, you're in the media, or you get to go to games for free, or you get to this, or you get to that. Well, there's there is a soul in here and there is skin on these bones. I mean, I'm a person too. So I like to try to remind people of that in my own way. And then another thing that I enjoy watching with the Blue Jays is how certain guys manage their own brands. And I think the two most savvy business-minded guys on the Toronto Blue Jays are a couple of players who are more than a decade apart in age. I think Jose Bautista is as smart a man as he is a baseball player, and perhaps even smarter. I think he's the type of guy who could make more money outside of baseball after he retires than he has inside the game, and he's not suffering. But you watch how he manages his brand. I think, what does he probably have, 500, 600,000 Twitter followers? He's following 300,000 himself. And that was all tied into the face of the MLB thing when he just started, or he had his handlers started following everybody at random. But there's a connection that people feel, oh my God, like Jose Bautista followed me. And I think that there's some sort of psychological thing where the fan almost feels an immediate connection with the player. You might be one of 300,000, but you are one of 300,000. And then the other guy is Marcus Stroman, who is still a really young pitcher, got huge aptitude for his job on the mound. But he went to Duke, which tells you something right there. You can't just be a good athlete and go to Duke. You've got to be smart and be a good athlete and in order to play baseball or basketball at Duke University, football, whatever the case may be. He's already trademarked HDMH, height doesn't measure heart. He's signed up with BioSteel. He's got a bunch of other things going on. And he really uses Instagram and Twitter to promote himself. And he is as savvy a guy. And he grew up, like Bautista's pretty much my age. Marcus is 11, 12 years younger. And you can kind of see the differences in how they handle things. But Marcus clearly grew up in your age group. He knows how to work all this stuff. And it's going to be a huge, huge asset to him over the next decade and a half while he's a pro ball player in terms of how he promotes his own brand and turns that into more opportunities to make more money.
Yeah. Nate, are there any guys on Seattle Mariners that, make an effort to, use social media effectively and actively on top of your head? Are there any players?
Well, before we get into that, I just wanted to stop you right there and apologize to Scott for being a 49ers fan. Just wanted to get that out there. I'm sorry. We have a lot of new faces on our team. So some of those guys I'm still learning about. Of the guys that were on the team last year, Nelson Cruz is pretty active. Taiwan Walker is another one who does a really good job of both interacting with fans and also giving kind of behind-the-scenes looks into his life, whether it's his cooking skills or his shoe collection or his two puppies that he has. And then we have some new guys that I'm excited to get to know. Steve Cishek, our new closer, seems to be really funny, have a great personality. We let him take over our Instagram account this weekend at our Fan Fest event, which was really fun. And he seemed to understand how to use social media as a professional athlete with fans. So, like I said, half of our roster is pretty much brand new, but I'm excited about the guys that we brought in. And I'm so sorry, Scott.
Jason, it's a smaller scale, but I'm sure there are some players on the team that are very that are active on social media as well, right? And you sometimes maybe will make an effort to make content around them and interact with them and make sure they're maybe retweeting or keeping in touch with fans and what's going on with the team.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've had a few first round draft picks come through the Whitecaps the last couple of years. One that jumps out of mind is Nick Castellanos, who now he's starting third baseman for the Tigers. He was with us a few years back, and he was a fan favorite. So yeah, we kind of did some stuff around him. maybe not for his playing, but for his name. We had a guy, our second baseman this year. His name was Joey Pancake, and he was.
Oh man!
Yeah, it was a great minor league baseball name, and so we created some stuff for him, and he was a great guy too. So he would interact with fans on his own social, and
I'm gonna follow him right after the show.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
that's the
great. Yeah, so we
awesome.
we came up with we're kind of known for our food items, so we came up with a Joey Pancakes food item. So it's pancakes with like pulled pork, and with the pancake being the bun of the sandwich. So yeah, in minor league baseball, you just gotta find the guys that want to have fun, and when somebody like Joey Pancake comes around, you gotta jump on that kind of stuff.
There's an IHOP promotion right there.
so true.
So in Ottawa, we have a Can-Am team now. We have Ottawa Champions, and we actually have some players in the league that used to have small little stints in the MLB. So Reggie Abercrombie, Scott, does that name ring a bell?
It doesn't, but Abercrombie,
yeah.
What's that? The clothing store or something? Yeah.
Abercrombie and Fitch.
Who did he play
does that
for?
ring a bell? He played for the Astros and the Marlins, I believe.
Okay. Well, Chris Colabello spent 7 years in that league.
Yeah, exactly. That's someone, and the Ottawa Champions actually went to the media availability when the Blue Jays did their winter tour, where Estrada and Pilar were there, and they were really hoping Colabello would be there because that's a whole bundle of content that they could have created. But no, it was just like what ended up happening is he wasn't active on social media, but he was playing on Sussex County, and he was in town. And people were tweeting out like, "Oh, I'm seeing Reggie Abercrombie. I remember playing him on MVP baseball in like 2005." So like those are little things like you never forget that you can kind of add on social media. And Nate, I wanted to say too. I think you guys were recently featured? Was that on Forbes for social media? Was that Forbes that featured the Mariners?
That was Sports Illustrated.
Sports Illustrated. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what algorithm or how they came up with that, but we'll take it.
Yeah, no, there was a couple of college sports teams too that have been unbelievable on social media. Clemson University has been doing some really cool things.
Yep.
And I know that that's a really cool thing. We've had people from college sports on the show before. We had Chris Yandel from Georgia Tech. We've had Justin from Pac-12. We've had Brian Wagner from Michigan Athletics as well. So it's pretty cool to see that. And one like closing thing, because we'll wrap up the episode soon. But do you also think that with the access that players that fans have, Nate, when you're on the Seattle Mariners account, there's a lot of followers, so you're not going to get to everyone, but that access that you could, that someone's going to tweet out to you and you have the opportunity to favorite their tweet, that's something that Scott mentioned to me when we were talking, before the show. Like, it makes their day, that connection, right, Scott? It makes their day, and it's something really fresh and refreshing about social media. Are there like, do you think as a whole, like, I know you said you're just in baseball, but Scott, maybe you can answer. Do you think that there should be more of an effort made to create relationships with fans in social media, or do you think we're at a point where we're doing just fine, like, as a whole? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of arguments made about that. Some teams maybe are not necessarily interacting as much, or the other way around. But what do you think about that whole interaction? I think we can go around the panel and ask Nate, what do you think about that, the ability to connect that special connection with a fan?
Yeah, I think our fans are what drive the business, and we need to pay attention to them. And when the team is playing well, yeah, the fans will come, but when the team is playing poorly, it's those relationships and it's that passion and long, year-long or lifelong love and support that they have for your team that is going to help you get through those times. So those one-on-one interactions that we have on social media, we really value those and cherish them even. I mean, the Mariners, I hate admitting this, but the Mariners to the playoffs since 2001. So you're talking before MySpace even. So we haven't even had the opportunity to have postseason baseball yet, and I'm really excited about it. But the one thing that social media has shown me from day one is that our fan base, thankfully, is still really engaged. They aren't apathetic about the team, which is the worst thing that could happen. And when we're good, we're going to continue to respond as much as we can. And yeah, it's going to go up and all of that. But we're really going to stick to the foundation that we've laid. And that's to be as engaging, as transparent as possible and to interact because, again, not just baseball, sports in general is very cyclical. One year you can be winning the Super Bowl or the World Series and the next year you might not even make it to the playoffs. And so you can't take those relationships for granted. And the Seahawks, I should say, have done a really good job of doing that as well. They're kind of an example of, well, they're still really good, but I think that they're in the process of developing great relationships with their fans that should help them when hopefully, Scott, I know you're even more hopeful that it happens sooner than later, but at some point they're going to have a bad year and the hard work and the great work that they've done over the past couple of years is going to help.
Well, yeah, Nathan, you guys haven't made the playoffs since MySpace. The Blue Jays just made the playoffs for the first time since the internet. So
that's right.
There's that. And despite that wonderful sales pitch, I will follow the Mariners on Twitter, but there's no chance in hell I'm going to follow the Seahawks account on Twitter just on principle.
Fair.
But yeah, connectivity is a huge thing. I said earlier on, there's, and I don't think it's any different for any of the other 29 teams in the big leagues or any of the X number of teams in any of the other pro sports, but there's a real diehard portion of the fan base that is really active day in and day out. And I've had an opportunity, like a lot of the beat reporters have, to meet some of these people. And when you shake their hands, it almost doesn't feel like an introduction for the first time because you've gone back and forth so much on Twitter or wherever, Instagram, whatever the case may be, that it feels like you've almost gotten to know them a little bit. So really all you're doing is officially putting faces to the names that you've been interacting with for a while. So from my point of view, that's kind of neat. And again, I just come back to the real savvy pro athletes. You got to be careful on this stuff, though. Baseball teams are filled with people, players, just like any office environment, just like any family, just like any group of friends, filled with people with different personalities. And so there are some athletes who really pump their brand because they're business savvy, and that's what they use Twitter for. I know for a fact that there have been guys who've come through in the 3 years that I've covered the Blue Jays who have run their own Twitter account and have tried to use it positively, but for whatever reason, whether it's the fact that their production on the field slips or maybe they say something that gets picked up on by the media, and whether it's taken in context or out of context, gets them in a little bit of trouble, all of a sudden those mentions get a little ugly, and they take those things personally, and it further affects them, and their production worsens from what it already was. Guys get into their own heads with this stuff. So, different personalities run their accounts in different ways, and there are some people, some players who are probably just best served to stay the heck off it altogether. I think knowing who you are, knowing what your brand is or what you want your brand to be, and knowing how your personality reacts to criticism, and we know that Twitter can be an ugly place sometimes for that sort of thing. You got to know yourself and really run your account if you have one accordingly.
No, that's good. But Jason, what do you think about that? The whole aspect of, you know, being careful on social as an athlete, or
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with Scott that, depending on how you use it, it can be used for good or bad. You definitely have to know your personality, and there's a lot of people out there that are just out to get you on social, it seems like, and especially when you're a pro athlete in Major League Baseball, you can't take it to heart. Just skim over your mentions sometimes and just move on. But I kind of go back to connecting with your fans too. That's a big thing for us is since we're a local community team, it's we've been around for 23 seasons, so not a huge history, but we've definitely grown our fan base here in Grand Rapids, and just interacting with the fans on a daily basis. If it's replying to their comments on Facebook or favoriting their tweets, that kind of stuff, it's definitely huge, and for our fans to know that their minor league baseball team is listening and is interacting with them.
And I think Nathan and Jason have to do it a little different than me too, because they're representing their organizations, where you know, I've just got to make sure that I'm not saying anything that TSN would object to or that would reflect badly on TSN, and I'm very careful about that. But you know, some of these players, despite the fact that they grew up in the social media age that we live in, I know for a fact on more than one occasion, like some team officials have had to pull guys aside and say, hey, look, when you're favoriting these pictures of naked women, people can see that. They can go into your favorites and they like you gotta be careful as players, and we gotta, as journalists or as social media coordinators for our respective teams, we gotta remember we are representing ourselves or our organizations. Players are representing the teams that they play on, the franchises that pay them, and all that stuff. And so there are some minefields that I think everybody has to navigate too, and really have to be smart about. And sometimes you do things innocently, not knowing that there are repercussions, and then some things come up and you've got to deal with them.
No, I think that's a great point, and I think that could relate to, you know, minor league baseball, you know, MLB, any sports. You know, my work with the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. You know, Scott, you were saying, you know, it's different for them because they're representing teams, right? I'm representing a league, right? So that's also different as well, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I think this was a really good conversation, and you know, Nate, I believe the Seahawks social media guy follows me on Twitter now, so I'm gonna try to maybe get him on a show because I think that would be pretty cool. Dom, I believe. Yes,
Dom's great. He's newer to the Seahawks. I believe this was his first year, but he did a great job, and he's a great guy. So yeah, definitely invite him on.
Yeah, Scott's gonna follow him like right now.
Yeah.
Well, you know, closing remarks, guys. We'll wrap it up, but I thank you, all three of you guys, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Nate, is there anything, you know, you want to say? Anything we should be checking out? We should be following?
No, I'm excited. You know, the season's coming up. I think this is the year for the Mariners. We actually, just as a side note, we just hired 2 new social media staff members. One that's going to be handling some of the day-to-day social stuff, and a new video producer. So I'm hopeful that we'll have some great new content to add to what we're already doing, and follow along.
Yeah, I think all three of us are going to be following that account now, so you got to make sure the content's up to speed. You know,
I'll give the Seahawks a few more shout outs, knowing that.
Yeah. And Scott, very quickly before your closing remarks, hot take: Blue Jays, crazy, like not social media. Let's just talk very quickly about Jays very quickly, because I think a lot of people tuning in are diehard Blue Jays fans. Crazy run in the playoffs. Pretty dramatic, off season. What's your hot take in terms of, what needs to be done? Like in the beginning, like fresh, like right out the gate.
Well, they've got to get off to a good start. If they don't, and I mean, I don't think there's a magic drop dead date, but if they don't get off to a good start, I think you'll see John Gibbons let go, because remember, he's not working for the people who brought him in. So he's not Mark Shapiro's or Ross Atkins' guy. That's just kind of the way it is in the business of baseball. But I would expect this will be a very good team again this year. And the one thing that I would say to fans, and I'm probably going to write about this once I get down to Florida, I fly down on February 21st, and first full day of work will be Monday the 22nd, so less than 3 weeks from now. But I would just implore Blue Jays fans to enjoy this season. Barring the unforeseen, I think this is certainly the final year that you're going to be able to see this very potent offensive lineup together all as one. It could very well be, in fact, I would say it's more likely than not, both Jose Bautista's and Edwin Encarnacion's final year in Toronto. So, really enjoy it. And we'll see what kind of ride this team can take the city on and the country on, like it did last year. But on paper, it's still a very, very good team, even though David Price is gone. I would anticipate they'll have a good season. Tough division, but I think they'll have a good season.
Right. Well, I think we all appreciate your hot take right there, because I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. It was such an amazing run. Those games were unbelievable. And I'm pumped for it to go, but it's gonna be it's gonna be different, and I agree with you. The thing is, there aren't that many changes. The main pieces are still there. The Josh Donaldson is still there. The pitching is still there. But I just think of also like the little things. I mean, Bush Party was really important. Like Kawasaki, like that was fun. That was fun. And a lot of fans were actually devastated for that he left for the Cubs, because I think they really enjoyed the entertainment aspect of him. But on the field, he wasn't that big of a contributor for the Blue Jays. But no, I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, Kawasaki was huge in the clubhouse too. His teammates legitimately loved him. And R.A. Dickey told the story. I mean, they got down 0-2 to Texas in that best-of-5 division series, and they had to go to Arlington and win a couple of games and then come back home. And, of course, nobody forgets Game 5 and the bat flip and all that stuff. But R.A. Dickey tells the story of they're on the bus headed to the airport to fly to Dallas, down 0-2, and Munenori Kawasaki is sitting there singing at the top of his lungs, and they say it really loosened everybody up. Nathan would know this well if he's been there a few years. That's where Kawasaki made his big league debut, at least. Played a lot of years in Japan, but broke in with Seattle. Real lovable character, and there's no doubt that he will, certainly his personality will be missed.
Nate, were you around the Mariners when Kawasaki was there, or was that before?
I was. I had the pleasure of seeing him in action, and definitely one of the more entertaining, maybe the personalities in sports. I only wish that he was there when video was starting to take off on social media, because I would have my camera rolling at all times with him.
Yeah. So, Jason, who's the Kawasaki of minor league baseball? Is it Pancake, or is there? Or we try to find someone? Like, is there someone who's just like very? I can't get over the Pancake. That's awesome. You have to tell me his Twitter handle after. I need to follow him. That's amazing.
Yeah, Pancake is definitely a character. I'm sure that there's plenty of them in minor league baseball. Yeah, but we'll see. We'll see who's on our team this year. We'll try to find the next Kawasaki.
Perfect. Well, thank you all three for coming on. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate you all tuning in for this baseball. This is what we've had hockey themed episodes. We're trying to do it with other sports, and we're trying to have like episodes tailored to specific sports and specific music genres and everything. So we really appreciate, and we hope you enjoy the baseball episode. So if you missed this episode, it will be on our YouTube page very shortly, and you can find out you can check out our older episodes on our YouTube page and our SoundCloud page for audio only. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.